Saw friends, welcome back to Hobby Vomit. It's me, Matt, and today I am recording a video review for The Outsider by Stephen King, the king himself. So, Bree and I read this together. It was what we were currently breeding. We finished this up, and yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. So, as always, I'm going to be using the BARF system. If you're unfamiliar with the BARF system, let me explain it to you quickly. BARF, it stands for four things. B, believable. How believable? Well, first of all, let me interrupt myself. This is our rating scale that we use here on Hobby Vomit. So, yes, B stands for believable. How believable are the characters in their setting? A stands for appeal. How interesting or appealing was the book? R is rhythm. How was the pacing and the plot structure of the book? And F is feeling. How did it make me feel? So, yeah, I'm going to go through all four of these in a spoiler free way first, and then I'll come around for some spoiler section and briefly talk about those again. So yeah, I think what one before I take on some of my previous book reviews, which I think only one got put up because the other one got the sound wasn't working, so I didn't feel like recording it again. Um, I think what I'm going to do is start by just reading you the back of the book because that's the best way to give you the plot without it being spoiler. So yeah, here we go. The Outsider by Stephen King. It says a living nightmare has come to Flint City, Oklahoma, as an 11-year-old boy is found brutally murdered in a local park. An unspeakable crime that rocks local law enforcement to its core, as the most heinous atrocity anyone there has ever witnessed. Equally stunning is the identity of the prime suspect, Terry Maitland, one of Flint City's most popular citizens, as well as Little League coach, English teacher, English teacher, and devoted husband and father. Detective Ralph Anderson, whose own son Maitland once coached, orders a quick and very public arrest. Multiple eyewitnesses and irrefutable evidence mean an ironclad case until the investigation expands and horrifying new details begin to emerge. Terry Maitland seems like a nice guy, but is he wearing another face? When the answer is revealed, it will shock you, as only master storyteller Stephen King can. So, yeah, that's what The Outsider is about. And let's get right into it. Believable. B in our BARF system. Believable. How believable were the characters in their setting? I gave this a 5 out of 5. If you've read any Stephen King or if you've heard anyone talk about Stephen King, character work is really his strength, I think. I think his characters are one, always very believable, and two, they just feel like real characters. So really you're following Ralph Anderson. He's the one that is leading the case. He's the one that makes that very public arrest of Terry Maitland. And so you're kind of following him through this ordeal of it goes from having an ironclad case to maybe they didn't do as much digging as they should have before they very publicly arrested this man, and kind of the fallout of that. And there are certainly some twists and turns that I won't talk about until the spoiler section. But Terry is a great character. You hate him, you love him, and then another character that is kind of a supporting role is Holly Gibney. Holly Gibney, she's probably the second biggest character in this book, although she's only in about half of it. Holly Gibney is a character from past books by Stephen King, the Bill Hodges trilogy. I really like Holly. I know a lot of people are split 50-50 on her. I like Holly, and I particularly like Holly in this amount. Not the main character, but a supporting character, but a strong supporting character. I think she works really well in this book. She's got some quirks, but I really like her. Stephen King, apparently this is his favorite character. He loves Holly, and he continues to write her. We'll see if I tire of her at all. I know at some point I'm going to be reading the book Holly, and that's a full novel with her as the main character. I'm guessing it's called Holly, so I'm just guessing. So we'll see how I like her in that amount. But really liked the characters. There's a whole full cast. There's like the defense attorney. There's someone from the DA's office, which I think is just the defense attorney. There's the actual like the wives, The wife of Terry Maitland is a part of this as well. Some detectives. It's a larger cast, but all the cast feel realized. And there's a lot more I want to talk about here, but I'll talk about it in the spoilers. Overall, though, 5 out of 5. Characters are excellent. Character work, as always with Stephen King, is excellent. Appeal. How interesting and appealing was it? Well, for me, um, I gave this I believe I gave it a 3.5. Let me check. I gave this a 3.5. Now, listening to the back of the book, I think it's a really great setup. Really great setup with like they arrest this guy, ironclad case, right? They got witnesses, eyewitnesses, they got evidence out the wazoo. They got this guy. And yet maybe there's some evidence saying otherwise and they jump the gun. I really like that premise and that setup and how both parties kind of navigate through that. I think that's a really, really great. The story does take some turns that I think are maybe less appealing. It's a chunky book. It's not a short book by any means. It's about almost 600 pages. Um, so there are lots of twists and turns here. If you're familiar with Stephen King, but you know I think the setup is that it's everything that I can talk about behind without spoiling anything. So yeah, I think 3.5 out of 5. Great setup, great premise. But I don't know if it holds that appeal throughout the entire book, but still 3.5 out of 5. Okay, next we've got rhythm. So pacing and plotting. Again, if you are familiar with Stephen King, some people like to claim this is his weakness is uh plotting. Maybe not pacing so much, although some I've heard that as well. But plotting. Sometimes people Stephen King is known for not being able to stick the landing, but I've not read a ton of King. I've probably read about close to 15 books now. I think I would disagree with that. And every time I see these threads online about how it's kind of like the hate for Avatar. It just became a thing to hate because groupthink, I guess. But every time I see people talking about that Stephen King can't stick the landing, it's always the same 3 or 4 books out of a catalog of like 65. So are they the best endings ever? Are they Brandon Sanderson endings where everything in the book leads to that? No, they're not. Do they feel like real endings? Yeah. Does it always leave me entirely satisfied? Like every little thing got wrapped up? No. Am I okay with that? Absolutely. So, you know, I think it's kind of an interesting complaint for Stephen King. But here in The Outsider, I well, let's say I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think the plot was very good. I think it was paced mostly pretty good. I think there's a bit of a lull in the middle that doesn't bother me too much. It's basically this big group of characters are meeting up for the first time, everybody. And they kind of for a big like about 100 pages or so, they kind of just recap everything that we as a reader know, but to each other that they didn't all know it. So it feels like a real meeting and the conversations feel real and it doesn't feel like it's just for us. Like it doesn't feel like it was just Stephen King reminding me, don't forget this is what happened. I think it because there's a lot of reactions in that meeting that needed to happen. And I can't explain why without spoiling. It is a longer lull in the middle. And then the second half of the book is certainly not as strong as the first half. And that's why it was knocked down a point for me. I still think it ends pretty strong. I quite liked the ending for this and the climax I thought was good. I think just the setup and the premise is so strong that the back half of it felt not quite as good. But still a 4 out of 5. And then feeling for me, I gave a 3.5 out of 5. So did this book make me truly feel anything? There were certainly moments. There's moments with Terry and Terry's family in the beginning where you kind of feel like if he was on the right side or wrong side of this and having to navigate that with his family. And it was a very public arrest that they make and how that affects his family. and their family in that town, it's a smaller town. So it's so public it really affects them. And so yeah, I feel bad for Terry, and Terry's family's got two young daughters and just how they're having to navigate that. Ralph is really, I think, the star of this book because you feel you go on a roller coaster with him of emotions throughout this book. And yeah, I think it was very suspenseful at moments and intriguing. There's a lot of mystery. And yeah, it wasn't over the top. I wasn't crying or jumping out of my seat, but there's some great moments. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for me. So overall, now we go to the S, which is barfs. I guess technically barfs. The S we kind of It just as a score and a sell. So my score is the average of all those, is a 4 out of 5. And then my sell to you is, if you like the idea, if you know Stephen King, if you are a character driven reader, this is a good book. If you like true crime, I think I can suggest this book. I will say, go in with an open mind. Not everything's going to be cut and dry, and there's not going to be an explanation for literally everything. You have to be okay with that, and you have to be okay with some Stephen King stuff. It's you know, it's not going to be like you're reading a James Patterson or anything like that. But I think you're going to get really strong character work, believable characters, and a fun ride. So if that sounds interesting to you, and that in the plot on the back of the book sounded interesting to you, I think it's a great book. Bree and I both really enjoyed it. So that's all I'm going to say for my spoiler free section. Now let's go into my spoilers. So we're going to go back to be believable. And I'm going to say it again because this is a major spoiler I'm going into. I'm entering spoiler territory. If you have not read this book, don't watch. Or if you don't care, I guess watch, but it will probably ruin some stuff. But all right, spoilers. So now I can get off my chest. There's a major turning point in this book when you realize that there are supernatural elements. So it was hard for me to kind of talk about all of these things, all those 4 points, without talking about the supernatural element. But it's such a major twist that I didn't want to spoil that, because I didn't know going in that there was anything supernatural about this book, even though I did come off of the Bill Hodges trilogy. So, I guess I should have known with Holly, maybe. But I imagine this isn't marketed as a Holly Gibney book. And in fact, she's not even on the back at all. So maybe I spoiled something. I mean, I don't think so, because on every reading list, you're like, what's the reading order for Holly? It's always in there. So I'm assuming people know. I also don't think you need to know Holly to read this. I think you can totally sure, it kind of spoils some of the Bill Hodges trilogy. So spoilers are weird around Stephen King. Sometimes people don't care and they're like, well, you should have known. And I'm like, I don't know how to navigate these waters. So yeah, that is a major turning point in the book. And I also think that it's going to leave fans divided, severely divided. For me, let's go back to believable. How do the characters handle this supernatural element? Was it believable? For me, yeah, I think it really was. Holly obviously had some experience coming into this book. So, and it makes it pretty clear in this book that she did. Talks about some of the things that happened in that trilogy. I won't say exactly what, but she has experienced supernatural things. So she's way more inclined to believe it. But the real test was the rest of the people around it. So Ralph Anderson, really, he's the star of this book. He goes from wrongfully arresting this man, and even in the process, there's always this seed of doubt. And yeah, he's just such a great character, and you are led to hate him in the very beginning, because you almost start the book liking Terry. He's the little league coach. He's a great family man. You love him even though you don't know him that well. That's just what Stephen King does. He can make you love or hate somebody in 2 paragraphs more than some people can do in 30 pages. And that's just what he's done. And so you really don't like Ralph at first, but then he just does such a good job of planting that seed of doubt in Ralph's head that the whole time he's just constantly questioning, did I do the right thing? Did I arrest the right man? And yeah, another major turning point is with Terry's death. So Terry dies, and even in his dying breath, he doesn't even say anything to his wife. He just says to Terry, to Ralph, like, "I didn't kill that boy. Like, I didn't kill the boy." And yeah, I think that just sends Terry on this spiritual excursion of him, like, well, how can there possibly be evident? I've got DNA evidence of him being here, eyewitnesses of this man taking this kid, and yet I've got video evidence of him at the hotel and DNA evidence, fingerprints of him being at the hotel at the exact same time. And he's just trying to navigate that. And yeah, I think the way he goes through that is believable. Holly brings him this information of like, "Hey, I think it's supernatural." And he still is like, "No, what do you mean supernatural? There's no such thing as ghosts or boogeymen, right?" But even up to the very end, I mean, he doesn't truly believe until almost the very end. And even in the final showdown, Holly's like, "Hey, look, I know that you are struggling to believe, but you just please do me a favor, and just for today, one day, the day we're going to confront, just believe today." And I think he does, and I think that's why they win. I think that's why they are able to beat El Cuco. And yeah, I loved Ralph's character. Holly's character I liked quite a bit. I really liked Howie Gold. I loved I'm trying to remember the wife's name because I've been watching the TV show as well, and her name is different in that. I think it's Marcy. That might be Ralph's wife. Ralph's wife is a great character. She's kind of the one that steers him towards the right side. He's doubting, and she's like kind of pushing him to believe in the supernatural, especially because the outsider visits the wife at night one night. And yeah, you know, I could say much more about Stephen King's character work, but if you've read it, you kind of know it's excellent. It's just excellent. So that's oh, I do want to talk about Jack Hoskins too. I love Jack Hoskins. He's a great villain. He just kind of comes out of nowhere. They mentioned him in the beginning. He's away on a hunting vacation, right? And Ralph is the detective on board, or on duty, because the third detective is having her baby. But then Ralph has to kill the kid that kills Terry, and he has to go on leave, which forces Jack to come back early. So he's already got this resentful mind coming back in, and then it tells you the little story of how Ralph, on his like comment card, he just put no comment, and that pissed Jack Hoskins off because it said all it needed to say, and so they just don't have a good relationship. And he writes such good villains that are humans, I think, and Jack Hoskins is a great human, pure human villain. I also like him, I will say, a lot more in the book than I do in the show. But yeah, he's a great character. You hate him, you love to hate him. Very compelling character, and yeah. So all the character works great. All right, let's go on to the next section, which is appeal. So appeal 3.5 out of 5. Now I can talk about why I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I think again, I think the first half, before you find out it's supernatural, 5 out of 5 for me. And I love supernatural. I love horror, and I don't like crime very much. Crime's not my favorite thing to consume, but this setup is just so good of like, you're accused of a crime, you know you weren't there. You've got evidence you weren't there. How is this going to resolve? The whole town hates you now because you've been ousted by the police for doing this because they thought they had enough evidence, and just it's a great setup. And then Terry dies, and that's even better. It's even better. You're like, oh my gosh. I was not expecting him to die at all. We'll talk about that, I guess, in the plot and pacing. But man, great setup. And then the supernatural stuff hits, which again, I kind of maybe felt like I knew going in, but I could see why that's less appealing to other people. They want an explanation. I didn't mind it so much. To me, the supernatural part that wasn't as strong was just I didn't know if I needed the whole boogeyman explanation and the lore behind it. I just didn't find that as appealing to me. Stuff like again, I love monsters. I love horror. Like I don't really need to know why it exists or what its doing so much. I don't know. I just didn't find that as appealing the second half. So that's why I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. And yeah, I guess that's all there is really to say about that. I don't think this book did anything super unique. Yeah, at all, really. I mean, there's a boogeyman, and I do like that it's a shapeshifter. I think that's really cool. Like that it feeds off children, I suppose. I didn't need that. Again, like I said, the lore and background on the monster. I didn't care so much about like as what it was doing and how it did it. I really liked that. How it intentionally put on the face of somebody and got eyewitnesses to see it and left a trail so that it could then move on to somebody else. So next we'll talk about the 3.5 out of 5 for that one. Rhythm, the plot and pacing. Again, I give this a 4 out of 5. I do think that conversation in the middle that I talked about, that's the conversation where Holly essentially brings the supernatural elements to the meeting with all these cops and detectives, people grounded in reality, and has to explain everything that happened at the previous crime where the outsider was before he became Terry Maitland, which again, all really interesting. But we already knew that because we went with Holly and did that investigation with Holly, and now we're with Holly in the room as she explains it to everyone else. So we already know everything. But I again, like I mentioned, is a key conversation because you get the reactions of everybody hearing that this is a supernatural boogeyman essentially, and Holly trying to convince all these people grounded in reality that a boogeyman one even exists, and two that it's a criminal and smart enough to commit crime and in a smart way to keep its identity hidden. So very important conversation. I think maybe it dragged a little bit. So there's that. I think the first half of this book was extremely well paced. I mean, it's that mystery, right? Of like how, I mean, for me at least, I was like, how is Terry going to get out of this? Right? Terry, even if they do find him innocent, which I just, that's what I thought was going to happen. Eventually, by the end of the book, they're going to find Terry was innocent and he'll be freed. Nope. He dies. He dies like a quarter of the way in, and that was huge. I mean, just when like it's picking up and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what is going to happen? How are they going to get Terry out of this?" And then Terry gets killed and you're like, "Oh gosh, poor him, poor his family. Now Ralph too, the guilt he's going to feel when he realizes that he didn't do it." Oh, brutal. So love that plot point. Thought it was excellent. And then yeah, everything with Ralph's I said I called it a I don't know, excursion. It's not an excursion, but just what he has to go through, and then meeting Holly. Kind of the middle is just a lot of investigation with Holly doing her thing, then coming back telling everyone, and then the last quarter is the showdown. The showdown at the I think it's Texas in the book, in the caves in Texas, where the outsider is now morphing into Claude, and I liked the showdown quite a bit. I thought it was tense, especially with Jack Hoskins there as kind of like the minion to the outsider. And I mean, I really liked it. I was expecting Howie to die. I didn't know about Alec, but I was expecting Howie to die. And yeah, I didn't know if Ralph was going to make it honestly because Jack Hoskins has it out for for Ralph. And so yeah, I thought kind of talking about characters again, I just thought Jack was such a good villain, and he is convinced by the El Cuco that he basically, which great scene as well when Jack goes to the barn and he's just pissed off because he doesn't want to go there. He knows he's gonna get there after they're done investigating, so he gets there and it's dark, it's abandoned, the crime scene's cleaned up, and then he sees someone in the barn. He thinks he does. He's like, "Oh no, I didn't see anybody." And then the outsider's just behind him and just barely touches his neck, and he's frozen in fear, right? He can't even turn around. And then that turns into like, yeah, a rash that the outsider convinces him that is, and we don't even know that it's cancer and it's going to kill him unless he does what he says. And I think this is extremely effective because we learned that Jack Hoskins' mother died of skin cancer, and that him growing up had to witness the deterioration of his mother, and how horrifying that was to him. That's such a scary idea to him. He is willing to do whatever this creature says in order to not because the creature says he can take it away, right? He's like, just all you have to do is keep them away from this cave where I am, where I'm getting my strength up. Just keep them away. They might not even show up, and if they don't show up, awesome. In 2 days when my strength is up, you can leave, and you've done your thing. I'll take away your cancer. But if they do come here, you got to kill them so they don't come find me. And yeah, I just thought that was a great plot point. It creates this little minion character, but he's awesome. Like I think he's a great villain. I love that. And so he's at the showdown too. I love his wrap up. The snake with the snake, he gets bit by the snake, and he's just a mess. And yeah, I thought that was great. I thought the final confrontation with Ralph, Holly, and El Cuco was great. I could see some people having problems with the way it's actually defeated with the happy slapper. I liked the happy slapper. I think people just have been conditioned by media to want this. It's always got to be perfect and like this mind-blowing like crazy ending, but it's just a creature, and she essentially tricked it into getting close and then did what she's been taught. I won't say anything more than that. Just did what she's been taught and what she's familiar with. And it's super on brand for Holly. To me, it's extremely on brand for Holly. So I thought it was great. Didn't bother me at all. So really like that final confrontation. And then from there, I love the end of the book. I love Holly and Ralph's relationship throughout the book. I thought the love that they've found for each other in obviously a platonic way, but I just I love that relationship. It kind of feels like the relationship she had with Bill. And yeah, I thought it was really effective. They have their final conversation, say goodbye, and Ralph says, "I love you" after she's hung up, and I love that. Like I just feel like it's powerful, and she's really opened up his mind to be a different person. And I hate, I'm sad that I don't know for sure, but I really hope there's more Ralph Anderson. I really like Ralph Anderson as a character. Great character. So yeah, plot and pacing, a 4 out of 5. I thought it was very good with that lull in the middle. And then I could see why people don't like the finale. I thought the finale was great. I could see why some people don't. So 4 out of 5 for me. And then feeling, I've kind of touched on this again. Just it didn't make me feel too much. I think there are certain moments, like that moment with Holly on the phone, or after she hangs up, the "I love you." I thought that was really powerful, and seeing Holly and Ralph grow together and help each other grow, love that. Love the anger that Jack Hoskins had. I think there was a lot of suspense, like a ton of suspense and mystery, especially in the first half, and then just leading up. So the mystery was the first half with Terry and like how they're going to get him out of this, and then the suspense leading to the final showdown was great. And there's some, in classic Stephen King fashion, there's some longer tangents, like when you learn about the history of the caves and why the El Cuco might be there. It's a pretty long tangent, but really interesting. Like the two boys going in to the back way of the caves, they get lost. The father brings a party to find them through the front. Someone, I think they shoot a gun off to like, I don't know why they shoot a gun off to I think they shoot a gun off though, and it collapses the cave, and so a bunch of dead people are in there, and that's why the Okuko is there. And I liked that. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, feeling it didn't make me feel super strongly. So I just gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I think it made me feel the things he set out to make me feel. It just wasn't like an overpowering amount or anything. So yeah, that is that is it, I think. It has been a little bit since we closed the final page on this, so I hope I'm not forgetting anything. There are certainly more moments that were great. I think trying to think off the top of my head. This time I'm trying to do a little bit less scripted. I didn't write anything down except for my scores. I'm just trying to go off memory here to see if it flows a little more naturally. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'll get used to this as I go, but trying to think of some other scenes I really liked. I know the first scene and yeah, it's just so Stephen King. Jack Hoskins, he gets up in the middle of the night and he's pooping, right? And that's when he's kind of like so tired from sleeping, and he sees through his shower curtain a person. And he's like, "Oh no, no, it's not a person. I can see it now. It's the shower head and the soap holder in the bar." But then he's like, "Oh no, it is a person," and you kind of see like the hand come around the curtain. And it's a great scene, and I love it's while he's pooping. Like it's just so you never see that stuff in like horror movies, right? It's always at the perfect time, but that would be the worst time. Like you're pooping, and then this creature shows up, like mid poop. What are you gonna do? Like you know what I mean? Like I just feel like that's so Stephen King, and I loved that. That was a great scene. The scene where Terry gets killed was pretty mind blowing to me. I didn't think he was going to get killed, but I really liked that and everything with that. The family of the little boy. I'm trying to remember his name, Pearson, I think, of the young boy that is killed, and how that affects his family with like the mother dying of a heart attack, then the brother killing Terry and getting killed by Ralph, and then the father trying to hang himself. That played out great, and then yeah, I think the final confrontation was great. I really liked it. I thought it was really tense. They have to be kind of quiet but confrontational at the same time, and they're kind of at like a stalemate, and just didn't know how it was going to end. And so, yeah, I liked this 4 out of 5 overall. Certainly not a perfect book, certainly not my favorite Stephen King, but I absolutely enjoyed it the whole way through. We did go on and read If It Bleeds, which is the next Holly Gibney. So I'm going to be doing a book review of this as well. And then we are going to continue on with Holly, and then with the upcoming I can't think of what the new book is coming out, what it's called, but it is another Holly Gibney book. So we're going to continue with that as well. So yeah, overall, really enjoyed it, and would love to hear what you thought if you've read this book. If you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and yeah, stay tuned for the If It Bleeds review, and yeah, see you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.